Hello, good morning everyone. I welcome you all. I am Dr. Harika Kishore on behalf of Vista's Learning. Vista's Learning is a e-learning online education platform which is having an ideology of providing quality education for all. Now, in this session, in continuation with the last session, where we had discussion about characteristics of sexual reproduction in organisms. Now, we also have a discussion of what are the events which are important in sexual reproduction, starting from pre-fertilization, fertilization, and post-fertilization. So, let's start our session now. We are discussing the chapter 1, reproduction organisms. In that, we are discussing about fertilization, where in last class we have seen the production, formation, synthesis of gametes, male gamete and female gamete, and also transfer of the gamete. Now, in this section, we focus on very important process, event, that is fertilization. Fertilization, which involves the fusion of male gamete and female gamete. Now, this fusion of gametes, after fusion, it is going to form a diploid zygote. Now, based upon the location, whether it is inside or outside, we are giving a terms called external fertilization and internal fertilization. Let's have a detailed discussion about what is this external fertilization and what is internal fertilization. Let's get started. Now, we are discussing about fertilization, right? So, fertilization is a fusion of gametes. And the male gamete, female gamete fuses to form diploid zygote, right? To form diploid zygote, and that is 2N. Here, it is very important process. That is what we are calling it as a vital event of the sexual reproduction. Perhaps it is nothing but the fusion of the gametes, as we are telling. Here, haploid male gamete fuses with a haploid female gamete, result in the formation of diploid zygote. Now, this fusion we can also call it as syngamy. Very important term, where fertilization and syngamy are used interchangeably. So, the process called syngamy result in the formation of diploid zygote. Zygote is very simple to understand, where two gametes of haploid in condition fuses to give rise to zygote, which is having diploid condition. Now, the term fertilization is often used in this process because there is a fusion of gametes. We can call the fusion of the gametes as fertilization. Let's move on to the next slide, where here we need to have a discussion about one phenomenon, and that is called as parthenogenesis. Parthenogenesis, right? Look at here. Here in this process, we are telling that it is very important to be involved fertilization in the sexual reproduction, right? But there are certain phenomena where it happens without fertilization. This term is very important. See, without fertilization, it is happening. And what we are getting out of it? Look at here. Directly from the female gamete, in some organisms, the female gamete undergo development to form a new individual, to form a new organism without fertilization. And that process, we are calling it as a parthenogenesis. Parthenogenesis is a mechanism, it's a phenomenon where the direct female gamete is going to develop into an individual without being involved in fertilization. Is that clear? So, those organisms which are showing this parthenogenesis are rotifers, honeybees, lizards, and turkey. So, it is very important that we have a different forms of honeybees, like queen bees, worker bees, right? Female bees. And the example, drone bees, male bees, comes into the category of production of an organism from directly female gamete without being involved. That means without fertilization process. So that is called as parthenogenesis. So here we have discussed about the what is mechanism called parthenogenesis. Simple. Parthenogenesis is the formation of an organism from the female gamete without fertilization. Without fertilization is very, very important here. Correct? Moving on. And as we have discussed about parthenogenesis, similar term where that is called as parthenocarpy. So if you divide, carpy, cards are nothing but fruits, right? Here, in this mechanism, in this phenomenon, we can get the development of the fruits from, that means the development of the fruit is taking place without fertilization. Again, this term is very, very important. Although the involvement of the fertilization is very, very essential. See, although in most of the species, fruits are the result of fertilization. It happens everywhere. But there are some exceptional cases, some species where the production of the fruits takes place without fertilization. And this mechanism, parthenocarpy, has been used for the production of seedless fruits. Seedless fruits has produced by parthenocarpy. And the best example for the parthenocarpic fruits are bananas, and this technique has been exploited so many ways to produce a large number of seedless fruits like watermelon. Now, moving on. So, here is a beautiful picture of algae. Now, we need to discuss about the fertilization in two categories. As I already have pointed you that external fertilization and internal fertilization. First, take a look at this external fertilization, right? If you look at the aquatic organisms, aquatic plants like algae, fishes, right? And also amphibians, example, frog. In all these organisms, we can see the external fertilization. So this example will be very, very important to remember. And it will be appear here. See, we have seen algae, right? Fishes as well as amphibians. Now, looking at this picture, it is very, very easy for us to remember now, right? Let's discuss about what is external fertilization. In the name itself, it is very clear in most of the aquatic organisms, examples are already given. Syngamy. What is syngamy? Fusion of gametes. And this fusion of gametes is happening outside the body of an organism. It is happening outside the body of an organism, and that too, as these are the aquatic animals, it is happening in the medium, and that medium is obviously water. Right? External medium here is water. Now, this type of gametic fusion, this type of syngamy, as it is happening outside the body of an organism, we are calling this type of fusion of gametes, fertilization, syngamy, as an external fertilization. As an external fertilization. Now, so this is a picture of a fishes, amphibians, where, we are moving on to the amphibians. Here is an aquatic example. Here, aquatic organism, fishes, where both male and female are releasing its gametes into the external medium, and that external medium is water here. It's very, very clear. Now, the male gametes and female gametes have been released into the external medium, and that is called as water here. Now, the fusion of this gamete is happening outside the body of the organism. So, we are giving a term called external fertilization. It's very, very crystal clear now. Moving on. Just now I said that I have mentioned amphibians. Frog. In frog also, the male gametes as well as female gametes are released into the external medium, and here also that is water. In this picture, you can see how the development fusion of the gametes takes place, and this after fusion, how these are going to develop into individuals. That means new frogs. So, as we are telling that both the male gametes and female gametes have been released into external environment and the fusion is taking place in the external medium, right? For this to happen, it is very, very important to present one thing, that is synchronization between male and female gametes. It is very, very important. Synchronization. Synchrony. Synchrony means happening the two things or more things at the time. Simultaneous and coordination should be there. Because, take for example, it's very simple to understand this mechanism. If the female frog releases its female gametes only and there is no availability of the male gamete, then it results in the failure in the fusion of the gametes. Obvious thing. Same way. Other example. There is an availability of the male gametes, but there is no female gametes available because synchrony is not present. Then also, in that case also, there is no possibility to succeed the fertilization because here also absence of male gametes. So, the male gametes as well as female gametes have to come at the same time at a synchronized manner. Did you got it? Very simple. Now, organisms exhibiting external fertilization should set its gametes with synchronization and synchrony between the male and female, and it releases a large amount of gametes into the surroundings. What is surrounding? Aquatic. That means medium. That means water. So water which enhances the chances, which increases the chances, which boosts the chances of syngamy. So synchronization is important for the successful increase or the enhancements of the chances of syngamy. Clear? Now, this happens in the case of example, bony fishes and frogs, where large amount of number of offsprings are produced. If you look at this picture, this is a huge number of offsprings that are coming from bony fishes. Number is huge. Offsprings number is huge here. But what happens? What is the problem? Here is another picture where we can see the fishes in the form of tadpoles. Again, their number is also very huge. But the major disadvantage which comes with this external fertilization is its predators. Let me take a pen and show you. See? Okay. Here we can see predators. So these predators are very much threatening for the successful survival and reaching its adulthood. Here, these offsprings which are produced are very vulnerable. So the vulnerable to the predators threatens the survival of this offsprings to reach its adulthood. It has been eaten up by the cat-eye snake here in this picture you can see. Right? Okay. Now, after now, we had a discussion about external fertilization. We have discussed about the aquatic as well as amphibians. Now, let's take a look at little more advanced type of fertilization. Obviously, that is internal fertilization. And this internal fertilization is shown by the plants like bryophytes, pteridophytes, gymnosperms, angiosperms, and advanced reptiles, birds, mammals. Let's see the process of internal fertilization in detail. Moving on to here is a beautiful picture of all birds, mammals, reptiles, and flowering sets of flowering plants. Angiosperms, gymnosperms. Here, all in the set of animals and plants, we are able to observe happening of internal fertilization. Happening of internal fertilization. As I already mentioned about different examples wherein which we are finding this internal fertilization in many terrestrial. Up to now, we have discussed about aquatic as well as amphibian plants, right? And now moving on to terrestrial. So, in many terrestrial organisms, fungi, reptiles, birds, mammals, and majority of plants, like I already have given a mention about, bryophytes, pteridophytes, gymnosperms, angiosperms. This fusion of gametes called as syngamy inside, inside, inside of the body of an organism, and that is what we are giving a term called internal, as it is a fusion of the gametes, syngamy, fertilization. Inside syngamy, internal fertilization. Simple, right? Now, moving on to C. Here, we are telling that internal fertilization happens. That means fusion of the gametes is taking place inside the organism. It is not external, it is not outside the body, but inside. That means both female gamete as well as male gamete has to reach one place, that is inside the body. How it is going to be happen? Let's have a discussion here. In all these organisms, definitely egg is already present inside. Egg is formed inside the female body, whereas the fusion of the male gamete is happened when the male gamete reaches the female gamete. In exhibiting internal fertilization, the male gamete is motile, it has the ability to move. Motile male gametes has to reach the egg because egg ovum is stationary, non-motile, in order to fuse with it. That means in order to complete the process syngamy. Now, though the number of the sperms, always the male gamete number will be high when compared to the number of the female gamete. Is very, very large. Number is very, very more. That significant, there is a reduction when compared to the number of the male gametes. Always the number of the female gametes will be very, very reduced. Number of the eggs produced. Now, this is all in the case of animals. Let's take the look at the case of plants, seed plants. So, in seed plants also, there is a possibility. That means we have to get both male gamete and female gamete to one point in order to go for the fusion. That means internal fertilization. However, the non-motile male gamete. Here in this case, what is that? Motile. It has the ability to move. So definitely, male gamete will come to the female gamete. Whereas we are telling that male gametes in the case of seed plants are non-motile. That means it is not having the ability to move. Then what is happening? It has to carry by some agents. And it has to carry the female gamete. And that is possible by the extension of pollen tube. Then what is this pollen tube? So, we are telling that, see, this is the extension of the pollen tube we can see here. Here, the pollen grains with two gametes inside that are produced by the anther will reach the stigma point, and this pollen grain starts extending in the form of tube, Then these two gametes starts this is the pollen tube which extends its pollen tube. This is the pollen grain, and this is the extended polar tube. Starting, the male gametes are here. Once the pollen tube is extended, it starts moving and reaches the point where the female gamete is present in order to fuse with it and to complete the syngamy process. So, here is a yellow line you can see where the extension of the pollen tube is happening, which releases its male gametes to reach the female gamete. Right? Now, moving on to up to which we had a discussion about the fertilization event, which is very, very important in the case of sexually reproducing organisms, where we also discussed detailedly about external fertilization and internal fertilization. After external fertilization and internal fertilization, fusion of the gametes happen, which leads to the formation of diploid zygote. Now, once the diploid zygote is ready, then it proceeds to another set of events that comes under the category of post-fertilization events. The events after the formation of zygote, after the fusion of the gametes and formation of zygote, whatever the events that comes, that we are categorizing into post-fertilization events. One is zygote, another one is development of embryo from that zygote. That is what we are calling it as embryogenesis. Right? Now, in organism, with external fertilization, that means fusion of the gametes takes place outside the body. Zygote is formed definitely external, outside the body. External medium. We are considering the aquatic animals, so definitely it is water. Where those organisms which are exhibiting internal fertilization, definitely the development of the zygote will be inside the body. So, fusion of the gametes results in the formation of the zygote. And the place where the fusion of the gametes decides the place where the zygote forms, definitely. So, if the external fertilization happens, the zygote presents externally. If the internal fertilization happens, the zygote presents inside the body, internally. Now, so, once, whether it is placed outside or inside, it has to proceed for the next event, that is embryogenesis, development of the zygote into embryo. Here, further development of the zygote into embryo depends on the two factors. One is its life cycle, organism's life cycle, and other one is environment where it is living, environment to which it is exposed. The factors which influence the development of the zygote is, one is its life cycle, life pattern, whether haplontic, diplontic like this, and environment where it is present. So, whether it is aquatic or terrestrial. Moving on to, in organisms, belongs to the category of fungi, algae, the zygote is protected by forming a thick wall, by developing a thick wall that helps them from desiccation and damage. They make, this thick wall makes the zygote resistant to the desiccation as well as damage. What do you mean by desiccation here? Desiccation is extreme dryness, and this thick walled zygote will not undergo to desiccation because it has been resisted, because it is protected against the excessive dryness. To avoid that, this zygote is, look at the picture, you can see a thick wall is formed around it. Now, once the zygote is produced, it is ready to develop into embryo. Before that, it undergoes a period of rest. It will develop into further embryo. In organisms with, here it is very, very important. As I already said, life cycle. It depends upon the organism life cycle, whether it is haplontic. If you take the example of haplontic zygote, zygote is 2N. Haplontic maintain its ploid condition. So it has to undergo a cell division, and that cell division is meiosis. Divided this what is meiosis to form haploid spores, which further develops into haploid individual. Now, this zygote is a very vital link. No matter how advanced the organization is, in all the advanced organizations also, we see the development of this zygote, and the starting of the life has to come from a single cell, and that single cell is zygote. Look at here. Zygote is vital, it's important link that ensures continuity. As we started the lesson, reproduction itself, I have given the importance of the reproduction. In that, I have used the term continuity of the species. Continuity of the species is very, very important to transfer its species, race from one generation to the next generation. And every sexually reproducing organism, including human beings, has to start its life from a single cell, that is zygote. So formation of zygote is very, very important, very, very vital mechanism. Here. Now moving on to, now we have a zygote, single cell zygote, where the life begins from, right? Now, that zygote now has to develop into embryo. That process, as we already know, that is embryogenesis. Embryogenesis. Now, embryogenesis refers to the process of development of embryo from zygote. Development of embryo from zygote. During embryogenesis, what happened to zygote to develop into embryo? It undergoes two important processes. One is cell division and other is cell differentiation. Very, very important. Very, very important. One is cell division, and that division happens by the means of mitosis. And the other process is cell differentiation. These two are very, very important to remember. Now, cell division, what happens with the cell division? One cell divides into two, two cell divides into four, and so on. So, it results in the increase in the number of the cell, obviously. Now, we have an increase in number of cells. Number of the cells are increasing. Now, that increase in number of the cells has to be differentiated in order to construct its level of organization, starting from cells, tissues, tissue systems, organ system, and finally, organism, individual, complete individual, right? Cell division increases the number of the cells. Just now I said that. Number of the cell. In the developing embryo, and cell differentiation, another process. After cell division, cell differentiation, it helps the group of the cells, number of the cells, no, group of the cells, to undergo certain modifications, certain modifications to form a specialized tissues. These two tissue systems. After the organ system. So, specialized systems and organs to form a complete organism. That is how zygote develops into embryo. From embryo, it undergoes cell divisions, cell differentiations, completing its cell structure, tissue system, organ system, and finally complete organism. Right? Moving on. See, this is a beautiful representation, picture, which gives an idea of both cell division and cell differentiation. Right? Here, the cells are dividing, number is increasing. Once the number is increasing and we have a many large number of the cells, each cell will undergo differentiation in order to categorize itself based upon its function to form organ system, and finally organism. This is how the organisms are formed. Now, this is very, very important. They are Oviparous and viviparous. We need to understand here. Based on whether the development, we know that the zygote is developing into embryo. But where is the site? Where it is developing? So, based on that, we have categorized into two. Let's understand it. So, development of the zygote takes place outside outside of the female parent or inside. It may be whether they lay fertilized or unfertilized, no matter. Whether they are laying the eggs or whether they are giving a birth to the young ones. Whether they are giving a birth to the young ones. The category is two. Female which lays eggs comes into the category of oviparous, and female which gives birth to the young ones comes into the category of viviparous. Now, if it is oviparous, in oviparous, like reptiles and birds as we mentioned, the fertilized eggs covered by, very important, it is a protective method, is covered by hard calcareous shell, and these eggs are laid in a very safe environment to protect them, are laid in a safe place in the environment, and it incubates. That means after a period of time, after the incubation time, it is going to hatch out as an young individual. See, this is what happens in the case of oviparous animals. Let's have a look at viviparous animals. This is a beautiful picture of what the female individual is giving a birth to the young one, right? So, on the other hand, in viviparous animals, the zygote, here, young one, this is important. The zygote develops into young ones inside the body of the female parent. Inside the body of the female parent. Now, after attaining certain stage of growth, the young ones are delivered out of the body of female organism, female parent. This is another beautiful picture which represents how the female are delivering their young ones. Here, because of proper protection, embryonic care that has been taken, in the case of viviparous animals, there is a chances for greater increase in the chances of viability. So here, the chances of survivalence of young ones is more in the case of viviparous animals, right? Moving on to, so up to now we have discussed about the birds, animals. Now move on to the plants. What happens in the plants? It is very important to understand what are all the parts that are withering off after fertilization. See, in flowering plants, the zygote is formed inside the ovule. Just now I have shown the picture how the pollen tube is getting its male gametes inside the female gamete to reach the female gamete. Once the fusion happens, there the ovule are formed inside the zygote. Zygote is formed inside the ovules. After fertilization, this happens. What happens? Sepals with the zoox, petal with the zoox, stamen and gynoecium part with the zoox. Whereas gynoecium part, pistil remains, however, remains attached to the plant. But there is an exception. We can see the persistence sepals in the case of these plants. Tomato, brinjal, strawberries. Here is a persistent sepal. We can see, right? Now, so this is very important slide where there is what is developing into what. There is an information about which structure is developing into which structure. Let's say zygote, as we already discussed, it is developing into embryo. First point, very important. Zygote is developing into embryo. Next, ovules, where the ovules are inside the zygote, they are developing into seeds that can be seen inside fruit after development. Now, ovary, complete ovary is developing into fruit. So, here we said zygote is developing into embryo, ovules are developing into seeds, ovary is developing into fruit. Now, this fruit is surrounded by a thick wall, and that fruit wall is pericarp. Ovary walls are developing into fruit walls, and that fruit wall is called as pericarp. A thick wall called pericarp that is protective in function, which finds to be present around the fruits which are produced. So this slide is very, very important, and these points are very important to remember. Now, after dispersal, the seeds germinate if it passes its favorable condition. Seeds germinate under favorable condition to produce new plant. That is what happened. So, with this is how we can see. With this, we have discussed about the events that is happening in sexual reproduction, fertilization, and post-fertilization. Fertilization, fusion of the gametes, followed by post-fertilization events, that is zygote and embryogenesis. How do you like the session? Hope you liked it. If you like it, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. If you find this video session interesting, please share with your friends, families. I'm Dr. Harika Kishore on behalf of Vista's Learning, signing for today, and meet you after the next video lecture.